Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen Bay, and I also went on a gap year. And for you guys who don't know me, I'm probably in a lot of pictures with ridiculous haircuts and everything. I just shaved all my head off, so I didn't look like this for most of the trip. So if you ask a lot of my friends back at home to describe me in one word, they'll probably say lazy. And that's nothing to be proud of, because I actually prefer to be described as lazily smart. And there's a huge difference. See, I went to a school in Maryland, not too far from here, that gave its students an A when you score a percentage between 89.5% and 100%. There wasn't a plus-minus system, and it wasn't a raw average percentage GPA. And I'd often tell my family and friends, wow, an 89.5% is the absolute perfect grade. It's most definitely my favorite grade to receive. I thought it was elegant, an 89.5, the minimum amount of effort for the maximum amount of return. And pretty much all of high school, that's what I strove for. Minimum effort, maximum returns. I was so dedicated to efficiency that I would often find myself putting so much effort into doing less work. And while sometimes it was pretty clever, in other scenarios, it was pretty pathetic. But that's beside the point. Bottom line, I'm going to do more work to do less. And that's the mentality today's innovators and scientists go to work with. They put in the effort to design, discover, and invent new technology that will ultimately make our lives much easier. So throughout this gap year, there were a lot of times when I just couldn't understand why we were doing things the way we did. I thought, well, although there are definitely exceptions, that there were simply more efficient ways to do the tasks we did. For example, in South Africa, I helped file papers for a health clinic. The clinic had one room dedicated to shelves and shelves with folders that had profiles of each patient. I wouldn't be able to put a number on how many files there were, but there were too many files. And when I worked at the clinic, I had to retrieve and find and put back the files. And to be completely honest, the system sucked. If the file was missing, I was ordered to look through every file just to find one patient's folder. And while I'm doing this patient would have to wait for me to do this. And with the amount of patients the clinic dealt with on a daily basis, it was inevitable that something would get lost. Pretty huge problem, right? It would have been great if everything was on some sort of database. There was already computers sitting in almost every room in the clinic. I understood that digitizing the files would be a serious pain, but it would save a lot of time as well as prevent files from being lost. I just didn't understand why the clinic hadn't already put in the extra work to do less work. With this mentality, I was the most confused when I was in Thailand. We stayed in a village called Danjang, where literally everyone I met was an organic rice farmer. They did everything by hand, from cutting the rice, to extracting the rice, to harvesting the rice. And this is not, by all means, easy work. It's physically excruciating and directly out in the beating sun. And what surprised me the most was that even though a lot of the villages were old and feeble, this was an active choice made by the village that they were proud of. There were neighboring villages with all this machinery to do the work they did every day. The village was actively avoiding that kind of technology. They said these machines were bad for the environment, but pretty much everyone else was doing it. It wasn't a big enough difference to me. I didn't get that. Why would anyone aim for 100% when you can get an 89.5% and get the same grade? But I worked, and I didn't complain, because after all, isn't this what I signed up for? So about halfway through Thailand, I hurt my wrist. And it took me out of work for a while, since pretty much all the work was in the wrist and back. And maybe the inner sloth in me was secretly happy that I was getting out of work, but I can easily say I faced some kind of boredom that no human being should face. I wouldn't be able to attribute a descriptive word to how I felt. I just felt bad. It was the first time I had no work to do. It was the first time no one expected me to do work. I was restless. During the nights, I wasn't tired enough to go to bed. And during the day, I was too tired to do stuff because I didn't get much sleep the night before. I never wanted to sit down. My body kept telling me I needed to move. And meals, they didn't have the satisfaction they had before. I was never hungry. I wasn't doing anything that would actually make me hungry. And since I wasn't going to work, I was lonely. I barely talked or met anyone. But above all, I felt guilty. I felt guilty that I was at my host family's house, taking up space and eating food and doing no work. I felt guilty because I felt like I was wasting time and that I went all the way to Thailand and just sat around. And I felt guilty because everyone was doing work except me. And then I realized the work that I thought that could be so easily done by machines was important. Avoiding those machines were more than just an environmental effort. This work was the village's culture. It gave them a reason to wake up in the morning, it gave them a reason to eat, and it gave them a reason to hang out as a community. This was their life. And a machine, it wouldn't be able to do any of that. But after returning to the United States, I see that things of the same nature are quickly disappearing. I got this concept from a video called Humans Need Not Apply. Imagine a pair of horses in the early 1900s talking about technology. One worries all these new mechanical muscles will make horses unnecessary. The other reminds him that everything so far has made their lives easier. Remember all that farm work? Remember running coast to coast delivering mail? Remember riding into battle? All sucked hard. These city jobs, they're pretty chill. And with humans exponentially increasing in these cities, there are more jobs for horses than ever. Even if cars work, there will be new jobs for horses that we can't imagine. But we all know today what happened. There are still working horses, but nothing like before. The horse population peaked in 1915. From the point on, it was nothing but down. There isn't a rule in economics that says better technology makes more better jobs for horses. It sounds really stupid to even say that out loud, but swap horses for humans and suddenly people think it makes sense. As the mechanical muscles push horses out of the economy, mechanical minds will do the same to humans. Not immediately, not everywhere, but in a large enough numbers and soon enough that it's going to be a huge problem if we're not prepared. And we are not prepared. You, like the second horse, may look at the state of technology now and think it can't possibly replace your job. But technology gets better, cheaper, and faster at rates biology can't match. Just as the car was the beginning of the end of the horse, so now does the car show us the shape of things to come. So let's apply the same scenario to us. Self-driving cars aren't the future. They're here and they work. Self-driving cars have traveled hundreds of thousands of miles up and down the West Coast and through cities, all without human intervention. The question is not if they'll replace cars, but how quickly. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be better than us. Human drivers, by the way, kill 40,000 people a year with cars in the United States alone. Given that self-driving cars don't get sleepy or stupid, use their phone while driving, or drink and drive, it's easy to see them being better than humans because they already are. Now, describe self-driving cars as cars at all is like calling the first cars mechanical horses. Cars in all their forms are so much more than horses that using the name limits your thinking about what they can even do. Let's call self-driving cars what they really are, autonomous vehicles, or autos for short. Traditional cars happen to be human-sized to transport humans. However, autos have so much more potential. Tiny autos can work in warehouses, and gigantic autos can work in pit mines. Simply moving stuff around is who knows how many jobs. But the transportation industry in the United States employs about 3 million people worldwide. That's something like 70 million jobs in a minimum worldwide. These jobs are gone. The typical counter-argument is that unions will prevent it, but history is filled with workers who fought technology that would replace them, and the workers always lose. Economics always wins, and there's a huge incentive across widely diverse industries to adopt autos. For many transportation companies, the humans are about a third of their total cost. That's just straight salary costs. Humans sleeping in their long-haul trucks cost time and money, accidents cost money, carelessness costs money. If you think insurance companies will be against it, guess what? Their perfect driver is one who pays their small premium but never gets into an accident. Autos are coming, and they're the first place where most humans will really see the robots changing society. But there are many other places in the economy where the same thing is happening, just less visibly. So it goes with autos, so it goes with everything. And the excitingly concerning aspect of this is that these kind of trends are happening faster and faster as we speak. Tim Urban describes this concept perfectly. Imagine taking a time machine back to 1750, a time where the world was in a permanent power outage, long-distance communication meant either yelling loudly or firing cannon in the air, and all transportation ran on hay. When you get there, you retrieve a dude, bring him to 2016, and walk him around and watch him react. It's impossible to understand what it would be like for him to see shiny capsules racing on the highway, talk to people who had been on the other side of the ocean earlier in the day, watch sports that are being played 1,000 miles away, and hear a musical performance that happened 50 years ago, and play with my magical wizard rectangle that you can use to capture a real-life image or record a living moment, generate a map with a paranormal moving blue dot that shows him where he is, looks at someone's face, and chats with them even though they're on the other side of the country, and worlds of inconceivable sorcery. This is all before you show him the internet or explain things like the International Space Station, nuclear weapons, or general relativity. This experience wouldn't be surprising or shocking or even mind-blowing. Those words aren't big enough. He might actually die. But here's the interesting thing. If he went back to 1750 and got jealous that we got to see his reaction and decided that he wanted to try the same thing, he'd take the same time machine and go back the same distance and get somebody from 1500 and bring him to 1750 and show him everything. And the 1500 guy would be shocked by a lot of things, but he wouldn't die. It'd be far less of an insane experience for him. Because while the 1500 and 1750 were very different, they were much less different than the 1750 to 2016. The 1500 guy will learn some mind-bending concepts about space and physics. He'd be impressed with how committed Europe turned out to be with that new imperialism fad, and he'd have some major revisions of his world map conceptions. But watching everyday life go by 1750, transportation, communication, etc., definitely wouldn't make him die. No, in order for the 1750 guy to have as much fun as we had with him, you'd have to go much further back, maybe all the way back to 12,000 BC, before the first agricultural revolution gave rise to the first cities and to the concept of civilization. If someone from a purely hunter and gatherer world, from a time where humans were more or less just another animal species, saw the vast human empires of 1750 with their towering churches, their ocean-crossing ships, their concept of being inside, and their enormous mountain of collective and accumulated human knowledge and discovery, he'd likely die. And then what if after dying, he got jealous and wanted to do the same thing? If he went back to 12,000 years to 24,000 BC and got a guy and brought him to 12,000 BC, he'd show the guy everything, and the guy'd be like, okay, what's your point? Who cares? For 12,000 guy to have the same 12,000 BC guy to have the same fun, you'd have to go back over 100,000 years and get someone so he can show fire and language to him for the first time. See, when it comes to history, we think in straight lines. When we imagine progress of the next 30 years, we look back to the progress of the previous 30 as an indicator of how much will likely happen. When we think about the extent to which the world will change in the 21st century, we just take the 20th progress and add it to the year 2000. This is the same mistake our 1750 friend made when he got someone from 1500. It's most intuitive for us to think linearly, when we should be thinking exponentially. For example, we've been using horses for thousands of years, but we've only been driving cars for about 100. And newer technology, like autos and planes, are even younger. This pattern, human progress moving quicker and quicker as time goes, is what futurist Ray Kurzweil calls human history's law of accelerating returns. This happens because more advanced societies have the ability to progress at a faster rate than less advanced societies because they're more advanced. 19th century humanity knew more and had better technology than 15th century humanity. So it's no surprise that humanity made far more advances in the 19th century than in the 15th century, and so on. Progress is rapidly picking up at a faster rate than ever before. I didn't come here to speak to you guys today to tell you that automation is evil or good. I came here to say that it is inevitable and coming soon. We need to start thinking now about what to do when large amounts of the population are unemployable through no fault of their own. What are we going to do when a huge part of our culture, something that motivates us, wakes us up in the morning, and supports us, is no longer relevant to us? Although for most of my life I loathed unnecessary work, work has always been a huge part of my life, as well as everyone around me. It gave me a reason to wake up and do things. Work has been giving me goals, dreams, and aspirations. It's introduced me into a lot of really cool people and gave me an excuse to really get to know them. But in the future, this won't exist. A huge part of our culture is disappearing, and this is only coming from me. I can't imagine what this means for people from places like Thailand or South Africa, where work has different implications and importance. Thank you so much for hearing this. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, you describe the differences between time, but you consider now you are in one time zone and you have seen so many different countries. Have you seen the difference in the development among these countries?
Yeah, actually, I'd say like a lot of them, they are not as like updated to like, you know, what I'm used to. You know, they're like a little more old style. So especially in like the rural places, like when we stay in the Satchela tribe, you know, like they'll have like a TV and stuff, but they want to have Wi-Fi, for example, or like a lot of like the stuff that makes our lives like more comfortable.
Do you see a faster development in these countries as opposed to developed countries like here?
Excuse me?
Do you see a faster progress that they get to the standards that we live in here?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I was only there for like a little longer than a month, and so I wouldn't be able to give you like an answer with like any backing.
Okay.
Kind of similar to Thomas's question, would you say that like the automation of like the United States and stuff, due to the fact that it kind of diffused into the more rural communities of Ecuador or Thailand, or do you think it'll kind of stay separate? What do you think will happen?
I think it'll diffuse over time because I mean our world is getting more like and more globalized like as we speak, and so I don't know, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I mean that's what has been happening in the past. Alex.
So you describe a world in which nobody has a job, right?
Yeah.
So in your conception, what do you see as the economic solution to a world in which nobody has a means of making a living anymore? You've outlined the problem. Do you have an idea what the solution would be?
I think if everyone just chilled out and just relaxed, I'm gonna respect you, you respect me, all of us just chill, it'd be pretty cool. I think that'd solve most of our issues.
How did you feel when you were in Thailand and you had nothing to do?
It sucked, I'll tell you that. It really sucked. I was very bored. I'm usually more on the quiet side, but a lot of people realized I was a little more talkative during that time. But I'd go over to people's houses.
Same mentality, yeah.
It'd be pretty crazy.
Like the in-between point, like before we reached, complete, self-efficiency machines, like when, so obviously, like working class people don't have a job, but like higher educated people still have a job, and so you have like a huge difference in gap between.
Yeah, I'd say it's happening as we speak. Like I say today is the in-between like process, and it's just going to be like that, and that's why like there's a lot of wealth gap between some people, and a lot of jobs that would be required to do like by hand or by people in the past are now getting replaced by like machines, like self-checkout lanes and like stores and stuff, or like robots on the phone. And so I think it's happening, and like it's just how it looks like what we're in today.
Now that you're back, your idea of minimum effort for maximum return, do you still subscribe to that?
Well, I think like yes and no, right? Like I don't know. I think like for me, like you can't. The problem with me in the beginning of like high school and stuff, like I apply that to literally everything. But I think that you can't just have one like philosophy, and you can't go throughout every single situation. Like I think I have to be open to adapting and changing accordingly. Thank you.